you would have been exposed to a number of different engagement models, whether it was alliances or PPPs or DNC, managing contractor. Of all of those engagement models, do you have a particular enthusiasm for one or other?
When you're looking at a form of delivery, I think the first question you need to have is, what are you trying to deliver? Because if you're just trying to deliver investor grade apartments, it's quite a different proposition to delivering something unique and one-off where a client has very high aspirations for what it should be. Most of my career has been around large, high profile, usually very complex one-off public social infrastructure where it's going to be around for a long time and there's expectations of outstanding quality of product. And what I would say is the most common industry forms of engagement are completely unsuited to delivering those types of projects, because the standard industry form of contracting is basically good for delivering a commodity where you want about 5 out of 10 in terms of quality and process and enjoyment factor. And it's very good at doing that. It's not a particularly efficient process, but it churns out basic commercial buildings of all different types. But if you want something like a stadium or a recital hall or a museum or a very high-end building that has complex needs, those forms of engagement are completely inappropriate, because in order to deliver something special, you need forms of engagement that enable the builder to contribute, and you need forms of engagement that don't have the builder operating under such a heavy burden of risk. They're spending all their time trying to manage their risks, which could put them out of business if they didn't manage them wrong. So the much more collaborative forms of engagement, like alliancing and variants of it, and it doesn't even have to be the form of contract. It can actually just be the way that you manage. But risk profile is a very big thing. It annoys me a lot, which the eagerness of every client group, including government, and government could be the worst, at its desire to dump inappropriate risks onto builders, and then it wonders why it has a very adversarial relationship with the builder, who's spending all their life just trying to avoid this dagger that's swinging above their heads.
So if we look at the amount of road and rail infrastructure that's being built across Australia at the moment, particularly in Victoria, do you feel that in regard, because that's not building a recital hall, that's building road and rail infrastructure, does that require the same kind of engagement model that you were just describing then, where you think there would be benefits in perhaps alliancing rather than another form of contract?
Well, it does. Well, and it depends, as I said, what you're looking at. If you look at the level crossings, they're all being done, to my knowledge, as alliances, and that's a completely appropriate response, because working in a live rail environment with the rail operator, with the people who own the tracks, with the safety regulators, there's so many people who are involved in that, and so many constraints of having to work in a brownfield site where no one really knows what the condition of the track and the equipment is until they rip it up. And asbestos was used in brake pads for a long time on trains, and it was used as a building product with a great deal of enthusiasm up to the last 20 years ago. It would be impossible to get a rational price from a builder to carry out those works. It would be so inflated with risk. It would be probably poor business for the state, and they'd probably balk at the cost. So I think an alliance is a very good form of delivery for those. I think for more standard pieces of road, I think a standard DNC is fine, because everyone knows what it's about. So long as there's reasonable knowledge of the ground conditions, everyone can price them, and there's a lot of civil contractors out there who are very good at doing that. Tunnelling, I think you could argue it both ways. I think the risks of tunnelling in and around the Yarra are pretty large with the variable ground conditions, and I think that the state's going to pay an awful lot of money to offload that risk onto international contractors who don't just swallow up risks without pricing them anymore. There's been, I think in the last 15 years, one of the big changes in PPPs is builders don't just absorb the risk without pricing it. So if the state now wants to transfer all those risks onto a builder, they're going to pay for them, and they'll pay quite a lot.